Amara, come and see, oh.
It's okay, just breathe. We're almost finished here.
Amara sat on the low concrete step outside the nurse's quarters in her uniform from the night shift. Her hands rested in her lap. Her eyes were open, but she was not looking at anything. She could hear the drums from across town. Deep, celebratory, relentless. Her colleague, Bose, came running across the compound, wrapper half-tied, mouth already open before she arrived. Amara, you have heard? Emeka is getting married to Gay Chief Okafor's compound. The whole town is going. Silence. Bose lowered her voice. I'm sorry, I thought you should know before somebody else. You know, Amara said quietly. She looked down at her left arm, at the soft inside of her elbow, at the small cluster of faded marks along the vein. 24 of them. Faint now, almost invisible, but she knew every single one. She had counted them this morning. Every month for 2 years, she had walked into that hospital alone, sat in the blood donor chair, rolled up her sleeve and given, not for money, for him, to pay his surgery bills, his medication, his recovery, his second chance at life. The drums she could hear from across town were the drums of his wedding. He had never once asked where the money came from. Amara pressed her thumb gently against the inside of her arm. Then she stood up, straightened her uniform, and went back inside to begin her morning round. She had patients to attend to. Let me take you back to the beginning, back before the needles, before the silence, before the wedding drums that played for the wrong woman. Back to when Amara was just a girl from Newi with a big heart, a small salary, and a love she gave with everything she had. Nyeri was the kind of town that woke up fast and went to bed late. Market noise by 6 in the morning, generator hum by 8 at night. In between, the whole town lived loudly and moved quickly, and everybody knew somebody who knew you. Amara's room in the nurse's quarters was small. One window that faced east, so the morning light came in early whether she wanted it or not. A single bed with a blue wrapper folded neatly at the foot. A wooden table beside it with 3 things on top. A Bible, a framed photograph of her late father, and a plastic cup she used for water. Her nurse's uniform hung on the back of the door every night, washed and ironed, even on the days she was so tired she ate standing up. She had 2 uniforms. She rotated them. She pressed every crease. That was Amara. Even when she had nothing, she was neat. Even when she was exhausted, she was present. The smell of the hospital followed her every evening. Antiseptic and something underneath it she could never quite name. She didn't mind. She had wanted to be a nurse since she was 9 years old. Since the day a nurse held her hand through the night her father was sick and talked to her softly so she wouldn't be afraid. She earned 42,000 naira a month. From that, she sent 15,000 home to her mother in the village. She paid her younger brother Chuku's school fees, 3,200 naira a term. She paid her rent. She ate. On paper, there was barely anything left. But Amara had a way of stretching what she had. A pot of soup on Monday could last until Thursday if she was careful. A bag of gari lasted 2 weeks. She ate 1 proper meal a day and told herself it was discipline. She never complained. There was no one to complain to. And besides, people had it worse. She knew that because she saw them every day. There was a boy who came into the ward one Tuesday afternoon, 17 years old, hit by a commercial bus on the Onitsha road. No family, no phone, no name for the first 6 hours until someone recognized him from the next street. The surgery was done. He would survive. But the medication he needed for the next 2 weeks cost 4,600 naira. His family arrived and they were standing in the corridor in the quiet, desperate way of people who want to do the right thing but genuinely cannot. The doctor said he would be discharged the next morning. Amara heard this on her way to the supply room. She stopped walking. She stood still for a moment. Then she went to her locker, counted what she had, and walked to the pharmacy window. She paid 4,600 naira. Her last money until the end of the month was 5 days away. She told no one. She did not tell the boy's family. She filed the receipt quietly and went back to her rounds. That was who Amara was. She gave before she thought about it. She helped before she was asked. It was not a performance, it was simply her nature, as natural as breathing, as automatic as her heartbeat. It was the same nature that would cost her everything, and save her even more.
6 months later, a motorbike accident brought him in. His name was Emeka Okafor, 30 years old. The motorbike had gone under a truck at the Inkpo junction. He came in unconscious, broken leg, internal bleeding, a head wound that had everyone moving quickly. He had no family present, no money on him, just a phone with a cracked screen and a wallet with 200 naira and a faded ID card. They stabilized him. The bills began immediately. Amara was assigned as his primary care nurse. He woke up on the second lay, confused, then afraid, then slowly aware of where he was and what had happened. His first clear words were directed at Amara. "Thank you," he said. His voice was rough from the tube they had removed. "Whatever you did, thank you." She told him it was her job. He smiled, even broken, even swollen on one side. It was the kind of smile that changed the temperature of a room. "How are you feeling today?" she asked, checking his chart. "Like a truck hit me," he said. She almost smiled. Over the following weeks, she watched him carefully, not with special attention. She was professional, precise, but she noticed things. The way he thanked the cleaner who mopped his room, the way he asked after other patients when he could hear them in distress, the way he looked at Amara when she came in for the evening check, like her arrival was something he had been quietly waiting for. By the end of the first month, she knew she was in trouble. She did not say it. She was not the kind of woman who said things like that easily, but it was there, warm and inconvenient, sitting in her chest every morning when she came on shift. His mother visited once, a woman in her 50s, dressed well, coral beads, good shoes. She sat by his bed and talked to him in low tones, and when Amara came in to check his pressure, she looked up and smiled. The smile was polite, too polite, the kind of smile that is performing warmth rather than feeling it. Her eyes moved over Amara, the faded uniform, the simple shoes, the unadorned hands. She said nothing. Amara noticed. She told herself it was nothing. It was not nothing. On the third month, Emeka needed surgery, not the emergency work they had already done, a second procedure, planned, necessary. The cost was 87,000 naira. He had nothing. His family sent what they could. It was not enough. He told Amara with his eyes down, ashamed in the way of a proud man who has been reduced by circumstances he did not choose. "Don't worry," she said. "I will find a way." She didn't sleep that night. In the morning, she went to the blood bank before her shift. First donation. The money she received she combined with every naira she had saved, and it was almost enough, and she borrowed the rest from Bosse and paid it back over 6 weeks. She told Emeka help had come from a friend. He held her hand and said he would pay it back. She said there was no rush. Month 6. He was healing, but slowly. The leg required physiotherapy, 3 sessions a week. Each session cost money. He was not yet well enough to work. She donated blood again. She did not tell him. He was beginning to call her every day now, not as a patient, as something else, something they had not named yet. Month 9. He was walking, not perfectly, but walking. A cousin offered him a small business opportunity, a provision supply contract. He needed capital to start, 20,000 naira. She donated blood again. She also gave him 12,000 from the savings she had been building for 2 years for a small piece of land in her father's village. She did not tell her mother. She ate gari and ground nut for 2 weeks without variation. He did not notice. Month 12. The business was moving, small but moving. He bought a second-hand keke napep to expand. He took Amara out for the first time. A proper outing, suya at a spot near the stadium, called Maltina. He paid, and he laughed, and he told her she was the reason he was still alive. She believed him. She believed everything he said because nothing in her experience had taught her to expect otherwise from someone she had given so much to.
Month 15. His mother visited the hospital again. She asked to speak to Amara privately, which was unusual. They stood in the corridor outside the record room. Mama Emeka was warm this time, friendly even. She held Amara's hand and said how grateful the family was, how much Emeka spoke about her. Then she tilted her head gently and said, "You know, my son has a future now, a real future. He needs a woman who can stand beside that future properly. Someone with family background, status, you understand?" She was still smiling when she said it. Amara stood still. She said, "I understand." She went home that night and sat on her bed for a long time. Then she cried into her pillow quietly, the way she had learned to cry in a small room with thin walls. By morning, she had decided it was just a mother being overprotective, that Emeka was his own man, that what they had was real. Month 18. He became busy. The calls shortened. Days passed, sometimes without a word. When she asked, he said the business demanded everything right now. She understood. She was patient. She was always patient. Month 21. Her colleague Ngozi mentioned casually that she had seen a man who looked like Emeka leaving Chief Dike's compound 3 times in 2 weeks. Chief Dike, the biggest chief in Nwe, one daughter, famous for his wealth and for how carefully he guarded that daughter. Amara asked him that evening. He said he had a business contact connected to the chief's household, supply contracts, big opportunity. She believed him. Month 23. Bosse sat across from her in the canteen and could not look her in the eyes. Amara said, "Tell me." Bosse told her. Introduction ceremony, 3 weeks ago. Emeka and Chief Dike's daughter, Chidima. Bride price discussion already happening, wedding date being set. Amara put down her spoon. She looked at her left arm. 23 months, 23 donations. She would make one more the following week before she found out. 24 in total. She would count them this morning before the wedding drum started. 24 times she had given her blood for this man, and he had taken every drop and built his new life on it without ever once looking back at the cost. She called him that evening. He answered. She asked him directly. He was quiet for 3 seconds. Then he confirmed it. Yes, he was getting married. Yes, it was Chief Dike's daughter. Yes, the wedding was in 3 weeks. Amara said nothing. He spoke again. His voice was careful, measured, the voice of a man who had rehearsed this. "Amara, you knew what this was. I never made you any promises. You chose to help me. I didn't ask you to." Her hand tightened around the phone. He kept going. "You are a good woman. You'll find someone. You deserve someone good." The line went dead. She sat on her bed. The kerosene lamp flickered. Her brother's mathematics textbook sat open on the table she had bought last week. Her uniform hung on the door, ironed, ready for tomorrow. She didn't scream, she didn't break anything, she didn't call him back. She just sat there, while the world rearranged itself into something she no longer recognized.
She still went to work. Every morning. Same uniform, same creases, same careful hands on the same patients. She still smiled at the patients, at the families, at the junior nurses who came to her with questions. She answered every question. She solved every problem. She was present. But she stopped eating properly. The one meal became half a meal, became tea and bread, and sometimes just tea. She lost weight over 3 months. Her supervisor, Sister Biajeli, stopped her in the corridor one afternoon and looked at her for a long moment without speaking. "Amara, are you well?" "I'm well, ma."
Sister Obiajeli looked at her for another second. Then she nodded and walked on. She called Chukwu every Sunday as usual. She asked about his studies. She laughed at his jokes. She did not tell him anything. She called her mother every Sunday also. Mama Amara was perceptive in the way of women who have survived much and learned to listen beneath words. After 3 Sundays, she simply said, "I am coming to see you." She did not ask, she announced. She arrived on a Thursday with a small bag and a pot of egusi soup she had cooked and wrapped carefully for the journey. She looked at her daughter in the doorway and her face did not change. She walked in. She put the soup on the table. She sat down. She said, "Tell me." Amara sat across from her mother and tried to begin with the practical parts, the money, the donations, the bills she had paid. But the practical parts led to the other parts, and the other parts led to the beginning, and the beginning led to everything. She talked for a long time. Her mother listened without interrupting once. When Amara finally stopped talking, the room was very quiet. Mama Amara reached across the table and held both her daughter's hands. "My daughter, you gave him your blood. You gave what was inside your own body to keep him alive. And God saw every single drop." Amara wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Her mother continued, "God keeps records even when hospitals don't, Ma." Amara looked up. Something shifted in her chest, something small and quiet, like a single coal catching light at the bottom of a pile of ash. She said softly, "But hospitals do keep records, Mama." Neither of them understood yet what that meant, but the words had been spoken, and they would not be forgotten. "6 months after the wedding drums, a new senior doctor arrived at the hospital. Dr. Tobena Obi, 40 years old. He had spent 8 years working with an NGO across 3 states, setting up community health outreach programs in rural areas. Now he was returning to Noe to establish a statewide initiative from a base hospital. He needed nurses. Specifically, he needed the kind of nurse that communities trusted. He spent his first week observing. He did not announce himself or call meetings. He simply walked the wards quietly, watched and asked the other staff questions. On Friday of that week, he went to the senior records office. He asked, "Which nurse on this ward has the longest history of going beyond what is required?" The records officer thought exactly 1 second. "Amara Nwosu." She went to find Nurse Gloria next, the senior nurse who worked at the hospital for 19 years and forgot nothing. He asked, "If you needed someone to lead a community clinic, who would you trust it with?" Gloria did not hesitate. "Amara. If you want someone who gives everything to her patients without being asked and without expecting anything back, it's Amara. There is no one else on this ward I would say that about." The following Monday, Dr. Obi called Amara into his office. She sat across from him, prepared to be told something administrative, a new protocol, a staff rotation change. He told her about the program, the 3 rural communities, the mobile clinics, the need for a lead nurse with the trust of ordinary people. He said, "I have been told you are the right person. I believe the people who told me, but I want to hear from you. Why do you do this work?" Amara looked at him for a moment. Then she said, "Because when I was 9 years old, a nurse held my hand through the night and talked to me softly so I would not be afraid. I have been trying to be that nurse for someone else ever since." Dr. Obi was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You start Monday." Amara walked out of his office and stood in the corridor for a moment. She felt something she had not felt in almost a year. Not happiness exactly, something quieter than happiness, something more like herself. Year 1, after the rock bottom. Amara led 3 community clinics across Nueri. She trained 6 junior nurses. She walked into villages that had not seen consistent medical care in years. And she built trust the same way she had always built everything. One person at a time, one act at a time, without announcement. Women brought their children to her. Elders asked her questions. Village heads shook her hand. Sister Albejeli watched from a distance and said nothing and smiled. Year 2, Dr. Obi put her name forward for a nursing leadership scholarship, a 10-month program in Abuja. She almost said no. She had never lived outside Nueri for more than a week. Abuja felt like another country. She said yes. She was the second highest scoring candidate in the program. She studied harder than she had studied for anything in her life. She made one friend in Abuja, a woman from Kano named Hawa, who was as serious and as quiet as she was. They studied together every night and laughed on Saturdays and did not waste a single day. She came back different, not in personality, in capacity. She knew now what she was capable of, and that knowledge changed the way she carried herself. Year 3, the government opened applications for a community health program coordinator position. Anambra State, a government appointment, real authority, real budget, real reach. Dr. B called her and said simply, apply. She applied. There were 31 applicants. She was the youngest by 6 years. She was appointed. Amara also, Community Health Program Coordinator, Anambra State. She read the letter 3 times at her kitchen table. Then she called her mother. Mama Amara did not speak for a long moment after she heard. Then she began to pray out loud, giving thanks in a voice that filled the phone and went beyond it. Year 4. She moved her mother from the village to a proper house in Hauka. 3 bedrooms, running water, a small garden in the back where her mother planted vegetables immediately, because old habits don't die, but they can be given better soil. She paid Chukwu's full university fees without being asked. He was studying engineering at UNN and he was brilliant. And he called his sister every Sunday and dedicated every exam result to her. She built a small clinic in her father's village. She named it after him. On the day it opened, she stood outside it and looked at his name on the sign and felt something complete. Not healed exactly, complete. Like a sentence that had finally found its full stop. Meanwhile, across Mary, Emeka's life had continued. The marriage to Chidenima was difficult from the beginning. She was the chief's daughter and she spent like one. The provision business could not keep pace with her expectations. Her father watched from a distance with the quiet disappointment of a man who had expected more from his son-in-law. Emeka worked hard, but the shadow of the chief's compound was permanent. He was a man living inside someone else's definition of himself. One evening, scrolling through the news, he saw a photograph. A woman in government attire standing outside a newly opened clinic, shaking hands with a state official. The caption read, Anambra State appoints youngest ever community health program coordinator. The woman was Amara. He stared at the photograph for a long time. His wife called him from the kitchen. He put the phone face down on the table